Pull up, grab the fuel nozzle, and get ready to fuel up on trends and strategies to grow your travel center business in this episode of the Truckstops Here, brought to you by NATSO. Now, here's your host, Amy Toner.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Truckstops Here. I'm your host, Amy Toner, and I have Darren with me. Hi, Darren.
Hi, Amy. How are you today?
Good. You are listening to the Truckstops Here, the NATSO Foundation's podcast. The NATSO Foundation is the research, education, and public outreach subsidiary of NATSO. Today, like I said, I'm happy to have Darren with me. Darren is NATSO's Vice President of Membership, and he's been with us. How long have you been with NATSO, Darren?
11 years now. 11
years, and you've been in the truck stop industry for...
Since 1988.
Okay. All right. You've been to hundreds of truck stops. Earlier in the year, Darren and I spoke at the Impact show, and we talked about how trucking is changing and how that impacts truck stops. And so I asked him to come on the podcast today to share some of those ideas that we shared. So we're going to start just really big picture, like we talked about at the conference, which is that the definition of a truck stop or travel center is changing, not just the definition, what they are. So what do you think what amenities make a truck stop today?
So I think, Amy, like we shared with the Impact folks, is It really is what is a person's perception of a truck stop, right? So
right.
When we talk about travel centers, we think, a travel center is a location that's going to service truck drivers and car customers, but not according to Buc-ee's, correct? So Buc-ee's in Texas says 18-wheelers are not welcome there, but they call themselves a travel center.
Right.
I really think depending on the professional driver, is he or she a day driver? Are they a long haul driver? Are they interstate versus intrastate? It could be something as simple as, do they have scales? Do they have DEF at the pump, at the diesel pump? And do they sell commercial diesel fuel? I think in today's world, that's pretty much what a travel center can be. Now, granted, your traditional truck stop is going to have significant parking and it's going to have amenities and things like that. But the majority of travel centers this day and age that you see being built on the interstates are some form or fashion of that, right? So certainly the big chains are still building, locations that have showers and some amenities and parking and so forth like that. But that isn't the case with all of the locations that are being built on the interstate. So I guess I did answer your question by saying, I think if you have a scale of some sort, again, there's going to be situations where you don't need a scale where you're located, but let's call it a scale, commercial fuel, and DEF at the pump. I think, if you've got something that a professional driver wants, he or she's going to stop with you if you have at least those three things.
Do you include in your definition these new hubs that we keep hearing about, like a hub for EV trucks or hydrogen hubs? What do you think about those?
Yeah, I think we have to. Like for example, even 10, 15 years ago when we first started let's say 10 years ago when we first started talking about new competition on the interstate, through my travels, it was not uncommon to see a truck pulled over to the side of the road and a driver walking to a convenience store, very, very honestly. So there might have been something at that convenience store that he or she liked, and they're walking into that store to get food or whatever it may be. So I don't think we can say they're not our competition. So if there is an EV hub out there that happens to have something that a professional driver might want, even if their vehicle is not EV, maybe they decide to take their 30-minute break there, or maybe they decide to park there and eat there, after hours or whatever it may be. So I think that if you're a sophisticated operator, you're looking at what is the competition around you, and that may or may not be today a business that sells commercial fuel. It may be something different. Recently, I went down to the Texas Food and Fuel event in Dallas, and I drove down there, and I specifically made a point to see how many trucks could I count that were pulled over to the side of the road and stopping at different businesses. Such, for example, at Buc-ee's. They can't stop at a Buc-ee's, but they were parked down the road and walking in, or a Whataburger or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, as a sophisticated operator, we have to really think hard about who's our competition. I don't think it's just someone who sells diesel fuel anymore. They may be competing for other pieces of the pie that's on our properties.
Do you think all this new competition is good or bad for the industry?
I think it's good in the terms of that. I believe our industry is having to step up. And as I've said this in I think in a couple of podcasts before, and certainly in speaking engagements and some blogs, I don't think our industry was ever bad. I think we were a very good industry, and we're a very successful industry. And I think it's proved during difficult times how our industry has been able to, push through very, very challenging times when it's impacted others severely. But I do think for a long time we haven't had the most competition. And I think we would all agree that when we look at our technology, how we've moved, and again, someone may say, well, that's because the retail world or the industry is moving in general is moving to technology, or COVID has pushed that. Whatever is pushing our industry, we're embracing technology at a much quicker rate than we ever have before. And that's not to say that Love's Pilot TA didn't, but you're now seeing technology advancements in a lot of the smaller operators as well. Just speaking with PDI recently at the show, they're rolling out shelf labels, digital shelf labels. Again, something I think you and I have been talking about since like 2015 or 2014. And while that may at this point still be out of reach for maybe a single store operator, our industry is moving that direction. So I think the competition is good. And I will say it's going to be tough, especially with regional players from the C-store world that are moving into our space. They're incredibly sophisticated. They know how to move people. They have great loyalty programs. Their stores are well laid out. They flow well. They're good looking. And they're going to put pressure on our operators. But again, I do believe that'll sharpen our saw, and I think our industry will be better for it.
With that, like trucking trend lens, do you think all this competition is impacting where professional drivers are stopping?
I do. So for example, if you're a day driver, or maybe you're out for 2 days, and speed is really the most important thing for you, or so for those drivers, he or she, that speed is critical.
Yeah.
These new operators that are very, very focused on speed probably will make you as a driver say, I'm going to stop there and fuel because I don't have to wait 30, 40, 60 minutes just to get to the fuel pumps. So things like that, again, they are built on speed, a lot of the new operators. And I think that'll be important. Again, showers are important in general, but if all of your customers are day drivers, or all of your customers are coming back after 2 days, they're probably not showering, so all of a sudden having that type of amenity may not necessarily be important to your driver, again, who's just, hey, they've got great prices, their fuel is inexpensive, and I can get in and out really quickly, and I can grab something to eat. We've all, shopped at a Quick Trip, and lots of people, not just us, are always blown away how fast the transactions are, how easy it is to get in and out of those locations. So just using that as an example, Quick Trip with a K, similar. And again, we have lots of members out there that are like that. But I do think those are things that drivers are beginning to look at.
So it sounds like, we were going to talk about the most important factors and how professional drivers choose where to stop. It sounds like it could be different for a lot of different people. Is there something that you think is like the biggest factor?
Yeah, I like what you just said. I do believe that if anyone was ever to survey all the different types of drivers that stop at our locations, it would give a very broad, what's important to me. Certainly, you have to really realize that the cost of fuel is the most important reason why they stop. So the fleets are going to drive their trucks, their drivers, drive their drivers to the locations that are going to offer the best deal for the fleet. And the owner operator is going to drive to the business that offers him or her the best price, because it is the number one cost on their P&L. But after that, I think, there are some other things that are critically important, such as, how clean are the restrooms? And I'd have to say that's probably the number 2 reason. How clean are the showers? Those types of things, like how easy is it to get in and out? The speed of service. Do they have to wait in line? Those types of things I think are going to be critical for them. Food offering, I'm sure, is up there as well. But are they treated with respect? Are they treated nicely? Again, I think no different than us, right? When we go to a location to shop and spend our money, we don't go back to places that are dirty. We don't go back to places that mistreat us. We don't go back to places that are slow. So I think when you are looking at the professional driver, we often forget that they're working. They're driving, but they're working. So they're not going to see mom. They're not going to see grandma. They're working. So how much does it cost to do stuff? No different than when we're going somewhere. Is it really clean, right? Is the service really, really fast? And do they treat us really, really nice? And do they have what we're looking for? I think, those 5 things are, in my opinion, and with the drivers I speak to, seem to be really, really important. So,
I know you get a lot of questions about the trucking customer. What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about professional drivers?
I would say that we forget they're just like us.
Yeah.
And I would say that's the biggest thing. We forget they're just like us. They're no different than us. They drive for a living. Versus we may go to an office, or we sit in our homes and we're doing business. But those same exact things that are important to us about how we buy things are no different than them. And I think that is something is really not focused on enough. We think, they're different. They're different people. They have different needs or different wants. But I think if you just look at it with a very open mind, as I just referenced, they want things at the best price that they can find. No different than us for the most part. We're always looking for a deal, even if we're going to this place or that place. If there's a coupon available, we'll take it. We want it to be clean. I won't repeat myself, but I think that's the biggest thing. When I'm talking to drivers, that's, I'm always talking about regular stuff with them, because they have the same issues. So they're going to have a bad day when we have bad days. There's days we won't want to, work because we're frustrated something happened. They have all of that. And the difference is they're driving when it happens, right? They're having to deal with car customers cutting them off. They're having to deal with really terrible infrastructure issues. They're dealing with all of that all day long. So I think, when I started with Love's back in 1988, the one thing I really liked what they were doing at the time is they made it really simple for drivers to fuel and get stuff. And I think when it really comes right down to it, that's probably some of the basic stuff we should all be focusing on. If retail had been really easy for all of us to shop, would have online shopping ever taken off? Who knows, right? But the ease of being able to order from your house, whether it's food now or retail, whatever, there's an ease to that. And in physical retail, sometimes we make it more challenging. We make people weave through things or stand in lines, queue in lines. You have to go to the back of the store to get the coffee or whatever it may be. And I think sometimes we lose sight of our professional driver that, hey, they are looking for things that make their job easier. And we should be focusing on that.
Okay. What about feeding them? What trends are you seeing in food for professional drivers?
So you and I spoke about this a long time ago, and I think it's finally beginning to reverberate. We talked about buffets a long time ago. About buffets are really cool, and they offer a lot of options, especially if you're like a vegetarian or you have certain meat requirements or whatever it may be. And we kind of moved away from that because our buffets were in self-service. I'm sorry, they weren't self-service. Per se. They were sit-down restaurants. And so time was involved. Well, and if you remember when we've been talking about this, like in Europe, they'll have buffets, like a cafeteria style buffet. And or in New York where you serve your own food and then you weigh it and off you go. So if you really kind of think of a buffet, it's probably the fastest way to get food if you did it self-service. So if you made it self-service, so everything's based on a weight. And again, if you're familiar with New York City, downtown in like Times Square, they have a lot of restaurants that are based on just weights. You put your food, you weigh it. Port Fuel Center in Savannah is doing that. They have a salad bar, and it's incredibly popular. The drivers love it. When I was down there doing my store review, drivers talked overwhelmingly. It was their number one thing that they liked. And they all said because it was fast, right? You pile your food on it, you go to the scale, you weigh it, boom, it prints out the price, and then you're done. So I think that's a food trend that will begin to start picking up. So if you look at some of the operators out there, they're already kind of doing a cafeteria style, like if you think of a pilot, it's served by a customer. But I think in this time and day where we're all struggling to get labor, I wouldn't be surprised if we move to self-service cafeteria done by weight. And just making it super, super, super fast for customers, just like self-checkout, right? So you go from having 5 people behind the counter to having 2 people behind the counter and just one person helping with the self-checkout, as an example. So I think that's one food trend. The other food trend that I think for sure is happening is East Asian. We've been talking to a lot of our members about how East Asian food is growing, whether it be Indian or could even be other foods from that area. But those are categories that folks are really getting behind and enjoying. So our members that have been putting in East Asian foods, while it might be a limited menu, are reporting that they're having really good success with that. A lot of our members are adopting, ways to sell food into the community and, in varying different ways of success. But I think that's something, I would certainly look at it, whether it be Grubhub or Uber Eats or DoorDash. And I'm not saying that our members are turning their businesses into ghost kitchens. I'm not saying that. But we do offer a lot of food that folks in and around the community might be interested in purchasing if we communicate with our members, with our customers that we have that available. So we do have some members that are doing that in certain communities. They might have Chinese buffet or Chinese food in their travel center and an Indian food, similar to Eureka Travel Center up in Eureka, California. Mondillion in that group, they have an Indian fast food restaurant and a Chinese fast food restaurant. And they get a lot of locals, not just truck drivers, but locals that come up there to the travel center to eat. So those that are thinking, through that and reaching out to the community, I think it is a trend that will continue to grow. Reach-ins, the number of cold or hot box reach-ins that we're putting in our stores. Many of us had, years ago, these ugly looking square things we'd put on a counter, and we've embraced the idea of these really gorgeous reach-in coolers with fruits and vegetables. A lot of our members are selling a lot of vegetables, and which is nice to see. So I think you're going to continue to see robust grab-and-go food programs, whether they be proprietary or through their grocery providers. I think you'll continue to see that grow. Obviously, restaurants, sit-down restaurants, even though drivers say they want them, the truth of the matter is we don't see that growing in general. Most operators who have full-service restaurants are struggling. So I think you'll continue to see some sort of hybrid version of that, where maybe if you have if you have a full service restaurant, you're using that as a commissary to support your grab and go food programs, and you start limiting your hours and things like that. Maybe you even shrink down the size of your restaurant to make it more into a bistro. That's a trend I'm certainly seeing.
Are you seeing more seating in smaller format? Like I'm seeing more, like we stopped at a Sheetz over the weekend that had like a little sit down area, or that Get-Go that we went to in Indianapolis. Are you seeing more of that? Like, I'm not saying sit down restaurant, but like a little sit down area.
Yeah. That's kind of the idea, like I'm saying about a bistro.
Yeah.
Kind of that idea. I think you are seeing some seating. Mm-hmm. I think there has been, when you and I met all those years ago, mm-hmm. there was a lot of seating available.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Service. And I think you're spot on. I think you're seeing a decision to have some seating, mm-hmm. But not significant seating, right?
Yeah, under 20 seats.
Yeah, and I think in some areas, like if you have a casino associated with, like in Louisiana, you have mm-hmm. to have a certain number of sit-down seats in your quote-unquote food service area. So I think some of that might be being driven by local requirements or state requirements. Mm-hmm. But I think you are spot on. And interesting enough, at such situations like Route 66 Food and Fuel, their location, they have a tremendous lunch rush.
Okay, I'm taking us off topic here, Darren, but I have a question for you. Have you heard of any truck stops that are trying to get people to work from them?
Have I heard of any truck stops that are trying to get people to work for them?
Like remote workers to sit and work?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I haven't.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I've been having it top of mind, but I've been seeing some places where I'm like, ooh, I could totally see myself like sitting in that corner at that truck stop working.
That's really, really interesting. I haven't, but I bet... I'm sure it's happening out there. So just so I'm clear, you're talking about customers mm-hmm. are working in the travel centers mm-hmm. and they are working, like someone might be at a Starbucks as an example.
Or like Panera, I think, has a program where they encourage people to work.
Yeah, I think that's really a cool idea. I haven't heard of that, but I have to believe in some areas, especially some of our members have really strong, for their customers, Wi-Fi, incredibly strong.
Right.
Like they are attempting to make sure that the drivers have really great Wi-Fi when they're at their location. So yeah, that could be an untapped opportunity to get people to sit in your store and work. Yeah. Okay. I haven't heard of that, but there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see. There's a lot of new technology coming to truck stops that I call it new, but we've been talking about it for a long time. Is there anything that's like you think most important that's impacting professional drivers a lot?
I think, again, that we're beating the horse dead here, but if you don't have a loyalty program yet and you're in the space, even if you're a single store operator, I really think that you are at a huge disadvantage. When I was talking about earlier what's really important to drivers, I'm confident that loyalty programs is way up there. Yeah, I don't know that for sure, but I do believe that loyalty is way up there. Again, cost of fuel, cleanliness, loyalty. I didn't reference loyalty earlier, but I believe it's way up there. So if you don't have loyalty at this point, I think it's a mistake. Number two, with that loyalty, allowing drivers to, obviously get benefits for purchases inside the store. But I think that the operators that are going to look at the owner-operator and say, how do I allow this owner-operator to get credit on fuel or fuel discounts for things that they buy inside the store? I think those that embrace that idea are really going to take a step forward. Because for a fleet driver, right, what's important to him is getting a discount on the fuel doesn't make that much of a difference to the individual fleet driver, so he or she. However, think about this. If you're a big regional player or a big company, you have those customers stopping on their own personal time.
Right.
So all of a sudden, if that person was able to get some sort of discounts on gasoline or fuel, you might turn a customer that normally, might not shop with you on their personal side, all of a sudden shopping with you when they know they can get fuel discounts. They're getting credit for all of their purchases. And certainly for an owner operator, getting discounts on food is really, really important. But also today, we really don't give him or her any kind of discounts on gasoline or diesel. So I think those that start to look at that will have a huge advantage. So tech in loyalty, also self-checkout, while it may not be popular per se with professional drivers today or for certain customers, it is a wave of the future. Of course, my big deal about the shelf labels, digital menu boards or digital price labels, I think those are tech advantages we look at and we need to. The last being vending. I know vending is not big here in the United States, but for any of those of us that travel overseas, vending is just part of the culture, and people don't have a problem buying pizzas, getting gourmet pizzas out of a vending machine and so forth. So I just really believe that vending's an opportunity to redeploy labor. Vending's an opportunity to rethink the hours of our locations. We're open 24/7. And a lot of times, we don't do a lot of business between certain hours, but we still have labor there. So I just think those folks that are starting to rethink how we deploy our labor and how we deploy automated retail will be tech leaders or trend leaders in our space.
Okay. All right. Before I let you go, what do you think the truck stop of the future, what amenities will it have?
I think the truck stop of the future, I'm going to repeat myself here, is going to have a lot of the things we just referenced.
Okay.
So it's going to have EV, obviously, for vehicles that want EV charging. And the truck stop of the future will have EV chargers that are not placed up against curbs, but they're pass-throughs. So for people pulling, Lightning, Ford 150 Lightnings pulling a trailer, they will have the ability to order product there while they're parked there and have food brought out to them, kind of like the old car hop days. It'll have commercial fuel, diesel. I don't see diesel going away anytime soon, certainly not in my lifetime, but they may have a hydrogen hub. Maybe we see a return to some of the, compressed natural gas. Maybe they'll be doing, if they're a location in California that has local business, maybe they have butane, for example. I think the truck stops will eventually embrace automated retail. I wouldn't be surprised if there's not vending machines out on the gasoline islands and vending machines outside on the diesel counters. I think our stores will have digital menus and boards, and they'll have self-checkout. And I do think we'll have very, very robust grab-and-go proprietary food programs like we do today, but even more so that are more self-service. And what else? I think we will have a whole different view of the store today. We won't be a counter that's lined up just in a row. Maybe we'll have pods throughout our store so people can check out accordingly, and staff, and I do believe this will happen, staff will be walking around almost like at an Apple store, right? So staff won't be stuck just stationary, sedentary behind a counter. They'll be out and about throughout the store taking care of customers. But I do believe speed will continue to really, not only cost, obviously, fuel, but speed will really become a huge driver. And then I'd say the last thing, I think finally women will get the proper attention they deserve in travel centers. And it's something we've been talking about for years. We will get better restrooms. we will have larger restrooms and restrooms that are focused on the female customer. Maybe companies will be brave and have female designers of their stores and female designers of their restrooms versus men designing restrooms that are small, right? There's too many restrooms in our industry where the ladies is literally half the size of the men's restroom. And that's the goofiest thing, because you've never seen a line of men waiting outside, maybe with the exception of a football game or something, right? But you've never seen men lined out on a restroom at a travel center. And it is a frequent thing that happens, especially during summer drive when our car customer counts go up dramatically. So that is not a good customer experience.
Awesome. Whew, we covered a lot today. Thanks for coming, Darren.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it very, very much.
Okay. And thanks for listening to today's episode of the Truck Stops Here. You can find us online at natso.com/podcast. If you have any questions or you want to come on the podcast, reach out to me at editor@natso.com. Hi, Darren.
Bye, Amy.
The Truck Stops Here was brought to you by NATSO, the association representing truck stops and travel centers. Visit natso.com for more information.